be able to share.
Okay, so I'll just go to your LinkedIn.
We are live right now. Hey, we're live. It's something nice to say at the end of 2020. We're still alive. We're live.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
A really good thing.
Well, there we go, Steve. Yeah, absolutely. Let me just...
We're just adjusting a few things here, and we're going to start in about 10 seconds.
I'm just going to share it to your LinkedIn, right? So the LinkedIn feed is I just shared it into your direct messages in LinkedIn. So then if you want to share this live, but I assure you we are live. We already have one viewer too, which is awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? All right. Yeah. You want to wait a minute? You want me to jump in or?
No, well, firstly, just want to welcome everybody to my good friend Jimmy Mitchell from My Online Guy has joined in. He's watching right now. Firstly, I just want to say thank you to my friend here, my co-host Steve Rogers, for joining in on this. Steve's going to share with you a little bit about the concept of why we decided to come together and talk about moving forward with power, passion, and purpose into 2021. And that conversation all started from pain. So we were looking at the pain points that we've had here. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Steve, to share with your wisdom and genius as to why you thought you'd bring us two together. We're like the comedy duo act of 2021 coming up, and this is our first gig, and you're the straight man and I'm the funny man. You're like Dean Martin and I'm Jerry Lewis. So
I want to see some of your Jerry Lewis moves, that's for sure. With his
don't worry, there'll be a few
comedy. He was a genius with his physical comedy for sure. Well, welcome everybody. It's so nice to have everybody on, and we'll have people popping on and off, I'm sure, throughout the next hour. And as Dave said, we'll be doing a series of these. And Dave and I met, gosh, it's been probably, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago or 5 years.
Yeah, 4.
And I was in Australia speaking at an event that Joan Oliveri had invited me to. So, Joan, if you're on.
Hey, Joe. Thanks for connecting us.
Hey, Joe, how are you? I saw her chime in on one of our social feeds about how awesome it was. And I know she was the initial connector on this. So Joe runs events in Australia and now throughout the United States in her own way. And I was invited to come and speak in Australia as a speaker and a keynote at one of the events Joanne was doing. And Dave was also there speaking, but he was also the MC of the entire few-day event. And he just did a great job kind of herding cats and keeping everybody in track and vibing with the group and understanding what was needed. And I was just in awe of his humor, his talent, his skill. And then when he got up to speak, his own story and his own message for the audience. So we connected at the event and stayed in touch, and we've been socially connecting and had some Zoom calls over recent weeks, months, and years. And Dave and I recently said, hey, it'd be kind of cool to get together and have some topics that we could talk about. And one of the topics that came up a few weeks ago was just the topic of pain. And that particular day, pain was very relevant in my life that day, but from things that were happening with some friends that were being very affected by things in life and COVID. Unfortunately, a few deaths of some people that had happened, some pain about what was happening in the economy, some pain what was happening in some of the people's business, and then pain in our own lives that we have that propel us to things. So Dave and I got on this topic of how pain is such an interesting thing that we always sometimes try to avoid, where it really is a great catalyst and a great gift. So the topic we decided to jump into was this purpose-driven life that many of us seek to lead, and how pain is such a necessary element of that in the formula of that whole process. So we are going to let this thing organically unfold. We are going to have 3 sessions that are going to be more structured. But for today, we were just going to kind of have open dialogue and open talk, and then we'll get more structured in the weeks ahead. So if you have topics or subjects or comments that you'd like to share in the comment box about either any subject matter or topics you'd like us to share, please type that in, and we'll make sure we add that into some of the agendas we have for each week. So Dave, I'm excited about our conversation over the next hour and looking forward to what unfolds here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's it's a fascinating thing, this relationship that human beings have with pain. And we're not talking just like physical, mental, but like emotional pain, everything like that. Like pain, it's not just like, ow, I just like, as I banged my elbow into the door earlier this morning and I'm suffering a little bit of pain. But I've always said that pain reminds me that I'm still alive. So that's number one thing for me around pain. And I thought the whole concept when you shared it with me about, this, learning from that. And I think there's a lot of people who are in pain or suffering, whatever way you want to, it doesn't have to be physical, like just in terms of the word pain, but there's a lot of people who are suffering through something which can be deemed as pain or painful. Right. And I think, it's to me, even if I reflect back on my journey this year, Steve, like to when it first happened, we just got back from Hawaii. Then a week later, we were in lockdown. In the first week of March, I had a big event scheduled. Business was just taking off, going extremely well, and I had this big event planned, and I was ready to, launch into the stratosphere. And all of a sudden, this stuff came along and shut down my massive event. And once again, and so with great empathy, I know there's a lot of people who have suffered far greater than I was at that time. But it was just like, crap, now what? And then like, oh my God, am I going to lose my business? Like all the stuff, like my clients are going to lose their business. That means I'm going to lose mine. And how am I going to help them? And it was quite a fascinating time to go through. And those pains that, those emotional or mental pains, there wasn't any physical pain, thankfully. I was in pretty good health and have maintained that through this time, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, you've done a great job.
Except for the couple of kilos at Christmas time.
Myself as well. Myself as well. So I think many of us kind of had that holiday indulgence, but such is life. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I just think it was, for me, luckily for me, I'd been through significant pain before. I've been through the pain of a divorce, the pain of, losing everything financially, relationship pains and other than just divorce and things like that. And, but business pains I've been through. I've lost everything almost twice now. And for me, it was the ability to reflect back on those moments that I've had that pain and that this too shall pass. You too shall survive this. You shall. And it was kind of like a very quick moment in my mind. And I share this with a lot of people when they ask me about this sort of stuff. I said, there's always two choices you have in any situation: victim or victor.
Yes.
Right. And then victim and victor, the difference is, this is happening to me or this is happening for me. And, just because, and I caught myself in the, oh my God, why is this happening to me now? I was just like, things are just, and like, no, hang on, Dave, what if this was happening for you? What would you do with this, from that pain point? So I was looking at, for me, how do I take that pain and turn it into opportunity? And so I wrote actually on my whiteboard a big thing. I put opportunity and I put, what's the opportunity now? And then I just started writing all this sort of stuff down because I caught myself into victim mode quickly and then got out of it and moved into victor mode. But if it wasn't for that pain point, and so two parts of pain for me, if it wasn't for my past experience with pain, that I learned how to deal with it, and actually that pain point that came along at this time, I wouldn't have made some of the shifts and changes that I made. And I think a lot of people out there in 2020 could say that a lot of the changes that they've made or evolutions they've had have been forced or thrust upon them. And so that pain forced me to rethink or reimagine my business. Like I'm like 12 and a half, year and a half into it. And I'm like my new company and everything. And I'm like, oh, I have to reimagine my whole business now already.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But the irony is I do this. This is, evolution, business evolution is, and, evolving ourselves and leaders. And I had to evolve quickly after only 18 months of getting this new process and everything that I'd done and every work that I was doing up in play. And, I'd planned, so I really accelerated what I'd already planned to do, but it was just fascinating. The relationship I've had with pain in the past helped serve me with the pain I dealt with here. Yet even though we're here, I still had that mental moment where I had to question everything. Yeah, so to me, it was really fascinating. One of the other things I would be interested to get your take on is one of the things that I look at in any of those painful moments. Yeah, Daniel Hall, 2020 was an evolutionary time. 2021 is going to be even more an evolutionary time too, I think, going forward.
Agreed.
Yeah. Agreed. One of the things that, and I'd love to get your feedback and anyone who's listening's feedback on this. One of the things that I did for myself was when I'm in any of that situation, especially that was emotional and financial pain, I'm like, what's the worst case scenario here? Like what like if everything went to hell in a handbasket, what's my worst case scenario? And if that meant I had to go pump coffee at the local coffee shop, or take my part-time job doing something to whatever to keep a roof over my head and feed my family, would I do it? And I was like, yes. So when I was able to make peace, what I call make peace with my worst case scenario, then okay, if you can make peace with your worst case scenario, then just go for what you want.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. And I think the preparation of this pain topic is what happens if life goes to hell in a handbasket kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the thing that's happened with COVID globally is we all have our own COVID moments in our life that not the whole world experiences at the same time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we've all had our brick upside the head moments that I call them. And I've had those myself, whether it was getting fired after being an executive and a CEO of a company that I rose to after 15 years being in the same organization, or health issues where I've been on a death table almost twice, or alcoholism that I've overcome. Those kinds of things are brick upside the head moments. And in my own life, those were as big of COVID moments inside of my internal universe as this outer global thing is coming at an impact over, from the beginning of last year. It's like, whoa, this is crazy. You start watching the news and it builds up, and then you start seeing food lines and you start seeing people in hospital beds, and the fear starts rising, and you wonder, yes, how is that going to affect my business? How is that going to affect my family? But it's outer circumstances coming in versus your own immediate life of what you said, divorce or issues with jobs, which are outer experiences. But I think it's that thing of you said about prepping your mindset ahead of time. And I think for me, that is one of the ways I've gotten through and used these brick upside the head moments, or these pain things that we're exploring tonight, i.e. COVID, or i.e. what's happened in the global world, is my daily life is prepped in such a practice of spiritual practice and of daily things that I explore, inner and outer, that I have these mantras that I use all the time about I am the calm in the chaos. I am the still in the storm. And so when I'm using my daily meditation, my prayer, my workout, my healthy eating, that my mind is always, no matter what gets thrown at me, no matter if it's in my relationship, my family, my finances, I know I have prepped myself to be the anchor in all of that. And it's almost, this is going to sound a little cocky, and I don't want it to. So I'm going to try and preface that, but it is almost like, bring it on. Like, come on, world, bring it on, because that's the game in which I am in, meaning life is real. Life is pain, power, pleasure, hardship. And I realize I'm in the game of life. So since I'm prepared for the game of life, I have to take all that brings. I have to take the storm clouds, the sun, the whole bit. So this pain thing of the preparation, by no means was I ever prepped for a global pandemic. I have to say that was an unusual, unexpected one. But the same practices of daily mindset and daily victor or victim mindset played exactly into key every day, every week, and every month that this has gone on. So I agree with your points on that.
And I love the like, this was a big wake-up call for a lot of people. Like, even for me, it was a big wake-up call. Even, and much like you, I do all the same sort of practices. I prepare for evolution, and I'm always challenging, and all my clients, I've challenged them, that to be prepared that something will come along and disrupt your life or your business. Something always will. Could I have ever predicted it would be this big? No, hell no. Like, I'm certainly do not profess to, but we're always preparing for that, which is why we ended up having to accelerate some plans and things. But having that mindset of preparedness is like, and I think those things like mantras and meditation and all that, which are seemingly in the past a bit woo-woo, are really, really important in the world today, especially when we talk about being, finding certainty and uncertainty. Well, the only place you'll find certainty is in here, not out there, right?
Exactly.
And certainty in here, not out there. And so the way to do that then is to calm that and find that inner certainty and peace about who you are and what you believe. And, like I said, making peace was me finding my certainty in an uncertain world, that I knew I could find anchored to some sense of assurance about my life and direction, that I could actually go after what I wanted, even in the chaos, perceived chaos, because I had that level of certainty about it. Because I have a daily mantra that I write down every morning. Just to remind myself, because spaced repetition is the mother of all skills. So always to and keep it in that space. So we're certainly doing that. But I just liken this This year, to me, the way if I was to sum up 2020 from forgetting pain and everything like that, but it was just a big wake up call. And and I'll say some things that may be very controversial right now in terms of for other people who have lost a lot this year. Is that and when this was all happening, I did some content around this, but there's a lot of people who are in jobs or have businesses that are making them miserable or stressing them out and making them sick. You and I both know that because we've had that happen to us in our own lives. And it wasn't something like this that came along to do it, but it was other things that came along to kind of nudge you and redirect you and go, that's enough, Steve. Whether you were fired,
that's right.
That was the universe almost saying, that's enough, Steve. This isn't what you're meant to be doing, which is why you're struggling in this space or suffering in this space. So I wonder how many people through this year were doing work that made them miserable, that may not have that work anymore, but now, if they choose, have the opportunity to go find what brings them joy. And we talk about power, passion, and purpose. How many people have been in a job that they've been suffering through for the last 5, 10, 20 years possibly, making them miserable, but the trappings of success that they've had, the house, the mortgage, like all that sort of stuff, the nice cars and everything, they have to keep doing that to keep feeding that.
Right. Yeah, you got to feed the monster.
And now they have an opportunity that has been forced and thrust upon them, not by choice, but by chance has been thrust upon them. And then depending where they go, this is happening to me or this is happening for me, finally have a chance to get out of this job. Now, there's a whole bunch of fear associated with the unknown now going, oh crap, now what am I going to do?
Right.
And so there's that, and there's also people in businesses whose businesses just didn't survive this. I mean, some businesses have thrived and taken off, and some just didn't survive.
That's right.
And so, empathetically, though, I feel for those people because it's still something they have to deal with. But I don't think those businesses were going to survive anyway. Like, how many people if you're in business and it's been struggling for 4, 5, 6 years, and every day is a hard slog, and you're just not getting anywhere. Perhaps this has just accelerated the fact that this business wasn't going to make it. But just because businesses don't survive this doesn't mean that business leaders or owners won't survive this.
Yeah.
Business you're not in yet could be way bigger than the one that you are in right now. The opportunity could present itself. A bucket with a small hole in the bottom of it, Steve, as you know, empties just as much as one that's deliberately kicked over. I said to people that COVID just came around kicking over a bunch of leaky buckets.
It kicked over a bunch of leaky buckets. And I think it also gave an opportunity for this pain thing and the hardship. If your business wasn't working or it wasn't satisfying to you, or maybe you were making money and you are making money, but you were not completely aligned with it. And there was a sense of stress of knowing you were supposed to be, quote, doing something here, and you're here. And in between that space, there's a sense of uncomfort, dis-ease, hardship, stress. And that is kind of the mindset of knowing where we are. And I had that thing happen with me after I got fired at corporate America 15 years. I started my own real estate company and ran that for 5 years. And I thought that's what I wanted. And I did that as an entrepreneur. I grew to great success in a year or two. I was in, great, accolades within my industry. But I realized I wasn't as fulfilled as I thought I was going to be doing it. So boom, then I completely took then it was a chosen redirection. So I've been in those spots where it's been brick upside the head, pain, fired. What the hell are you going to do? Got to make an income, got to, replenish. And then, wow, you're on this path of the stuff you thought you were going to do once you could do it. And then you're doing it and you realize it's still not it. And it's still not enough, which is that evolution thing. And so for anybody that is either in that spot right now themselves, either they're still working or they're still in the business, but it's just not fulfilling. And COVID or this global pandemic has put a spotlight on that feeling, that intensity. Or like you said, Dave, some people are just out, like they were taken out. The business is closed, it's just down. And that is a tough place to be. I've been in that spot. I get it. I totally understand that feeling. And it's not to diminish any of that. But for me, I continue to look at, since I've been in my late teens, how does the universe want to speak to me and how do I want to listen to it? And how do I want to show up in it? And I've believed since my early, late teens, early 20s, that I am a co-creator in the universe, whether that was creating a corporate executive a job, moving to California, starting an entrepreneurial business, writing books, whatever it is, I get to co-create. And in all of that, there is pain that allows that to be and to happen. Because what I find is that it's never exactly the way we think it's going to be. And it's never as fulfilling as we thought it might be. It doesn't mean we're still not on the right course of evolution, as your shirt says, an evolution at work. And that's what our life is. It's a constant evolution at work. And if we're constantly looking and say, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this experience of my own pandemic or a global pandemic? What is the lessons we're taking from that? I think is the key. My wife and I were taking an early morning jacuzzi this morning, and we're lucky enough to live in California, and it's quite beautiful, and we're very blessed in that fashion. But she was talking about, it was for her, it was kind of ironic that we are in 2020, and in 2020, when you get your vision checked, if you have 2020 vision, it's when you're seeing things clearly and you're seeing things, focused in and zoomed in. And she said she found it really interesting that in the 2020 year, that this is when things seem so chaotic and so crazy and so thrown to the wind. And for her, it was her in her own mind saying, to me, this is really where it's had Mother Nature, the universe, God, whatever, bringing it back and saying, what is the most important things to you in your life? Whether it's family, your career, your spirituality, your connection of readjusting, that this is what it's trying to show us. What's your 2020? Like, what's your crystal clear vision about what you don't want or what you do want? And is it existing right now? And I thought it was really, I hadn't thought about the 2020 vision thing, but I like that concept.
Oh, yeah, like it's, the irony is not lost on me. Like hindsight is 2020. Because it's like when we sit there and we go, and to your point, I loved it. It's, if you look at, what's really important to you, when you realize all this sort of crap that we deal with in life, and you pare it down to what are the things that matter most to you in the end, when you're sitting there, if you're writing your eulogy, you're doing all these sort of things that people do, what matters to you in the end? No one's going to be standing over your gravesite going, well, there was the hardest worker in our business, right? They're not going to be doing that. And so those things, and it has 2020 forced a lot of us to realign with what matters most. And, because what did people crave the most in this year? Connection to family, the isolation, the distance, knowing we could always go and meet our family and jump on a plane, even though it was painful and expensive, we had the freedoms in that sense to do it. But now we're saying, no, you can't. And all of a sudden we're realizing how important it is to us.
Yes. Absolutely.
In your business, the same thing with business. Sorry, the market doesn't need that in the world anymore. You need to now go and find something else. Your business does not exist anymore.
Right. Well, and it's been a one fell swoop of how many people didn't think they could work from home or have their workers work from home. How many people thought they couldn't live in a certain area, or how many people thought, oh, that idea will never work. I mean, Zoom already existed as an example. Zoom already existed before COVID. But Zoom now has become a word just like water. I mean, it's that, and there are people doing things on Zoom or live stuff that didn't exist. There are business models with education or products or services that did not exist 10 months ago that are already multi-million or multi-billion dollar businesses from a universal shift in consciousness that some were creative enough trying to chip away at before it was ready for the market, i.e. society. Because sometimes your product, your idea, whether you're in the healthcare business, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you're in design or advertising, whatever it might be, sometimes you have an idea that is so progressive and so out there, that it is just sometimes ahead of the market and the market's not quite ready to absorb it. To me, what COVID did is it accelerated the massive consciousness in a global way about what's possible to now shift how to communicate, how to deliver, how to share, how to market, how to advertise, how to eliminate, how to connect. All of those things are now in ways that we go, wow, I never thought that would be possible. I mean, to see my granddaughter doing her gymnastics class in my living room with her class online is, something else. My yoga studio now, which I love to go to, is now all virtual for a while. Now, I clearly miss being in a yoga studio as an example with other people and the instructor and the music. There's nothing sometimes that substitutes that experience for it. But what a whole nother level of model that creates in a business model for those business people that are on the phone about looking for new revenue streams, new business models. Maybe you're taking your traditional business and you're just adding this element in. I mean, so many people are saying even after COVID, they're going to keep X, Y, Z in place. So to me, this shifted us to accelerate what the market or the consumer is now able to absorb or tolerate, which then opens up this whole vacuum of new products and services that can either get created from scratch, or maybe your idea that you're wanting to get off the ground is now viable, or maybe you're now pain point enough is something you're going to create something or do something that's going to fill a void that wasn't there before.
Yeah, and I think the key word there, because I've had the same debate with people down here in Australia, is accelerate. People are like, oh, we'll wait to see all the advancements in technology that we're going to get. I said, no, we're going to get an acceleration of all the stuff that was already planned that we weren't prepared for, because that we weren't willing to accept. And like you talk about Zoom, and whether it's Teams or Zoom, but like Zoom is kind of now like having like I need to hoover the floor, right?
Right.
They've kept like skidoo, like I got to just jump on the skidoos. Like it's the brand has named the thing. So everyone's Zooming, whether they're using team meetings or whatever, right? So it's quite fascinating from that. But this accelerating is, and if I just use like even platforms like this, for me, if I'd said to my clients pre-COVID, hey, all the coaching I'm going to do with you is going to be online. Our quarterly sessions are going to be online. We already do all the accountability stuff we already do was already online anyway. But now I'm going to have all my one-on-ones coaching with you online, and that totally online delivery. They'd go, it's a bit B grade. Because they don't get to see it in person. But then, of course, all this stuff happened. And all of a sudden, the market goes, "Hey, this stuff's really great."
Yeah.
And it's funny, so this pain that we all went through caused us to have to accelerate some of the other things to find a way through it, to adapt to, as human beings do. But also, and another irony of it all, Steve, and you've already touched on a little bit, is I think that this advancement of technology has almost humanized, and I think what we're going to see in terms of that is like more humanity back into, even though we're going to be further apart if we're doing like this. But like you and I, our relationship has blossomed through the benefits of here, because we can't physically be together, yet we've maintained a relationship. We're doing some really great stuff together. You were kind enough to put a testimonial for my book, and I happily had you on my podcast, and we've done all this cool stuff that technology has allowed us to do, so you and I can be more human together.
That's right. Exactly.
And even when you're having like your team meetings, a lot of my clients were saying, one of the clients was quite funny. They were talking about every Monday just to have a bit of fun and keep the culture going, because they have really great culture in their business, which is phenomenal. They had like dress up Mondays for the Monday meetings. And one of the guys, he's always in there, and he's always in his 3-piece suit and everything like that when he's in the office. They're insurance brokers, business insurance brokers, and very, very professional. And there he is. He gets on with a full Super Mario costume. It's like put on a hat or something, and he's in this full Super Mario costume. They go, we didn't even know he had a personality, So you get to learn more about their people, and that so-and-so has a cat. Didn't know you love cats, and and so it's been fascinating to see this. That we've become more accepting of this, but it's also allowed us to be a little bit more human, because we don't have the physical connection now, so we're having to seek some kind of emotional and other type of connection through technology. So I wonder if it's going to allow more humanity to come out, and like that people are people, because me, with my book, leadership is simple. You lead people. People are not a resource, right? So it's all about I care about you as a human being first, employee second. And so will this sort of stuff here help us to get more human in the workplace? Will it help us to be more human with each other? Because we may not be able to physically be there. You're able to you may not have had the time to go see your granddaughter and doing her dance and things like that, but now you spend time to do it.
Yes, absolutely.
You invest time, like I said.
I agree. I think about all the same thing on this end of the world over in my clients are from California to New York, wherever they might be. But this Zoom experience or online stuff with having virtual Christmas parties, or they have happy hour nights where people have their favorite cocktail and they're sitting in front of the computer having whatever it might be, or art classes. So it does accelerate the human connection in a way that I think it makes it more consistent and more often. And at the same time, it also shows us a void that there is something about the human connection in person, in reality, that there is some magicalness around not being able to pick up certain things unless you're in a room with people, whether it's vibe or facial expressions or humor or whatever it might be. So I think that there's just going to be this mix of how do you blend both of those things and still expand your horizon of this kind of communication. And I think that is something that's really, really important. I don't know if we have anybody on that's chatting or wants to chat or throw out a topic or a comment on any of this if they've got any thoughts. But if you do, feel free to put it in the chat box. I'm not sure if we even have anybody following besides Dave and I, but if not,
Yeah,
fine tune.
there's a few
Dave and I
people
always have
watching.
a good conversation ourselves, and we always enjoy
Well,
hearing
there's
ourselves.
a few people still there who are tuned in right now. Yeah, one of the things I want to pick up on is, and you talked a little bit earlier, is function, and like, to me, function versus form, and I think this is where, from a pain point of view, pain has a certain function, but we put the form to that, right? And it's like anything in life. So and I've always worked with people. Our mind wants to put form to everything, because what is it going to look like, and how does it?
Right.
Rather than saying, well, what does it do? What's it supposed to do? And then let the form reveal itself. So what is the function of 2020 in your world, like in your life, in your world, your life? What was the function of 2020? And it's something for people to. I would challenge anyone listening, watching this, to go, write down, what was the function of 2020 in my life or my world? What was it? Because you can easily talk to the form of it, what it looked like and what happened and all that. But what was the function of it? Like, why did it happen for you? And then to take that pain and whatever it might be, whether some people didn't even experience any pain through this, and then what was the function of it? And I just want to highlight one classic example. I was on the radio, on a radio talkback show here, Sunday, would have been the day after Boxing Day, and I was on there with one of the other speakers, and he was saying COVID saved his life, like this pandemic saved his life, and he openly shared it. So this is not me, but he was talking about he's in music and theater and all that sort of stuff, and he was starring in a play, Pirates of Penzance, and he had I think he was Ahab, had the big beard and everything like that, and what he didn't realize that underneath his beard, because he couldn't tell because he had this massive beard, he had a big lump of growth, and it was actually he had tonsil cancer.
Oh, wow.
And because COVID canceled the show because they couldn't do live performances, he shaved the beard off and found the lump, and they found it just in time. And he quite happily testifies the fact that if they hadn't found it when they did, he'd be dead.
Wow. That is crystal clear of talk about a wake up of hadn't heard it to that distinctness before, of a reality of life or death, and that beyond it causing deaths versus this is really helping someone find life. Because
and then he ended up losing 40 odd kilos. He was a fairly large fella, great talented man, and his story was just, for me, I'm thinking, look, for all the bad that is perceivably out there and in the form that people see it in, there's been some amazing stories through this. And it's like, so function versus form. So what was the function of 2020 in your life? And I would challenge anyone, like I said, to write down, what was the function of 2020 in my life? Not the form of it. What was the function of it? Look, if I look back at it, it caused me to reflect. The function of it was to, I was so gung-ho on what I'd started, because I have a theme for myself every year, in terms of my own evolution. So I'd gone through Steadfast, and in 2020 was the year of consolidations for me. It was to consolidate everything that I was doing. And that consolidation was to make things stronger and everything like that. And COVID was the answer to that, in a sense. It made me really strong. It made me consolidate everything that I was doing. I had plans and everything like that. And it just said, Dave, you need to consolidate now. And it was, for me, I looked at it and go, well, the function of this was actually that. And since then, once again, said with great empathy, because I know other people have suffered, but my business, like our organization, Circle Leadership's like doubled in this year.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about that topic when we were talking about pain, is that I had some clients or people that I speak to that are feeling guilty during this time because their businesses are accelerating and they are doing better than they were previous COVID. For various reasons. And they're like, God, I know that I keep watching the news and I have people that businesses are challenged, and like, gosh, my family's okay. My neighborhood's okay. My life is okay. And my business is going through the roof. So there's the other side of that coin. And again, it's a reminder to us that in any element there, again, there's this challenging, good, bad, and different, or, light, dark, cold, hot, yin, yang, the whole bit, the process of all of that. And it exists in all things every day, all day.
Yeah, and this is it's a fascinating thing, and this might be a crude example of this, but if I put this cup up here, and I've done this with my daughter when I was helping her to understand it. If I said, okay, Steve, describe that coffee cup to me as you see it. We've lost your sound.
I put it on mute for a minute. Sorry about that.
Okay. Describe that coffee cup as you see it.
I see a white
Yep.
A cup with a little bit of letters. I can't read what they all are, and
Yep.
it looks flat on the way I'm looking at it from this side.
Okay, great. What I see is a white coffee cup too with a blue inside. It's got a nice handle on it, and I can see some lettering as well. So we're both looking at the same thing, but I see it differently to you. And if I
Yeah.
turn it around and I go, now describe that cup to me.
Yes. Now I see the handle, and I see it looks like a nose handle, and then I've
Yep.
got the color, and I'm a little colorblind, so I'm not sure if that's blue or green. But I now have a different perspective, and now I see the depth of the cup because the color has made it that it has dimension now.
Yeah, and yet I see the cup you were talking about.
Yes.
So how can we both be talking about the same cup but see it from two different perspectives? This isn't change. It's the same thing, but it's how we choose to look at all those things that's going to make a massive difference in life, right? And once again, that's what I say. So the way you see the function of this cup, or the form of this cup, sorry, it's different to how I see it, but the function of the cup remains the same, subject to how you choose to use it. And for us, perspective is everything. And when your perspective on pain is different to my perspective on pain, which is different to anybody else who's listening's perspective on pain.
That's right. That's right.
Right? Because what you and I might think is it's just like I cut my finger here. We were moving some stuff and a little bit of glass bit me. And I'm like, damn it. Whereas for me, that could be like that. Other people, it could have been like mind-numbing pain, or I could be a big wussy about that little nick, and people might not even felt it.
Right.
So pain is all relative to each other.
It is. That's right.
One of the things I'm always empathetic to, like, just, and they don't have the experience that you or I have. And maybe there's people who this is the first time. Like, if you go back to when you had your very first painful moment, losing your job or whatever it might have been, and I go back to my first most painful moment when, perhaps when I went through my divorce, for example. Like, if that was my very first time, if I go back to that moment, I'm going, oh crap, yeah, that was really painful, and like it took me months to process and get through that. Yeah. And so this year could be that for people.
Yeah, I think it is for that for people. And I see Alan here saying change is going to keep coming thicker and faster. And that is because of this pain acceleration, I think, is part of that formula as well. And because the world is ready for this change. Sometimes the world propels in more rapid change, and sometimes it feels a bit stagnant, depending on how you're looking at it, how you're looking at the cup. For some people, their life is spinning and evolving quickly, and some people, it's slow and monotonous. And this is a time where I think we all heightened an awareness at the same time. Like when you see from China to Russia to Mexico to US to Australia dealing with the same issues at the same time, trying to find vaccines, having hospitals filled, food lines, how some company or countries reacted differently on the shutdowns or the reactions. But it was like everyone dealing with the same problems at once, and it heightened the awareness of how connected we all are as human beings on the planet, regardless of where you reside or where you live or what what language you speak. Everybody wants to have their family be healthy and happy. Everybody wants to have love. Everybody wants to have purpose and meaning. Everyone wants to have good health care. People want to have, healthy governments and systems. And this has been a highlight of realizing, wow, it doesn't matter where you are on the planet. We all deal with that stuff, and we're happening to deal with it at the same time right now. And so I think that this way you perceive things, or with the cup, or the way you look at it, is really, that pain point. I think about when I first started acknowledging pain, it kind of brought up that point. I think back when I was a kid, I grew up with 4 brothers. So there was 5 boys in my house. My parents had 5 boys in 6.5 years. So it was like a tribe of a litter of male pups all in the house. And, it was like this dominant of pain. I mean, always like fighting and brutal. And, and my dad was a military guy. So that was back when disciplinary action in a physical form was accepted by life, So I remember pain back from an early age. I was also a very fat kid, so I was picked on a lot and I was bullied. So I remember pain being something that propelled me, and it caused me to introvert and read. It caused me to learn. It caused me to leave my house when I was 17 years old. Pain caused me to move to California when I was in my 20s. So I think back, I found a way to make friends with 2 things that I never expected to make friends with, and that was pain and fear. And I learned to really make friends with pain and fear, because I realized they were necessary elements of a fulfilled, encompassing life of what I wanted. And if I didn't make friends with those things, I would never fully have what it is I said I wanted and what I wanted to create. So that is something that this time, again, has brought up for many as human beings and people on the planet right now, is how are you dealing with this, and how is it propelling you forward, either in victim or victor? And then even above that piece of it, I mean, for me, the humanity piece is very obvious and very common about what we're dealing with healthcare and governments and systems and processes. But then there's also the spiritual piece of it. You know, I think that the element of really what's life really all about, you know, when you ask yourself that question, why are we here? Why am I on this planet? What's my purpose? What's it all about? You know, what is it that I'm here to do for myself and for the world? Why does, you know, unfair things happen if there is a God? All those questions that we have to have asked ourselves in our human condition. And to me, the only way to have that, it realizes that there's a spiritual answer to all of those things based on whatever your spiritual practice is. So just like you looked at that cup, we all have our vision and our perspective on our own spiritual connection based on our story, our history, our upbringing, our religion, our spirituality, our faith. And I think that this time of the function of that, I would think more than ever on the planet, not more than ever, I shouldn't say that. I think in my lifetime, I have seen that this pandemic has challenged people to dig deeper and search for more meaning globally than anything that I have seen in my lifetime. I mean, yes, I went through September 11th. Yes, I went through the Gulf War. Yes, I went through, you know, various things, but it was seeming isolated at the time. It didn't seem like a global thing happened to the whole planet at one time. You know,
and
so I think that's an interesting thing to look at.
The power of this pandemic was it didn't attack the rich, it didn't attack the poor, it didn't attack the pandemic wasn't racist, it wasn't sexist, it attacked everybody in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
But so if you're human, you were probably impacted some way, shape, or form by the pandemic, right? It just attacked humanity.
Right. True.
And you know, again, it was a which I guess is the true essence of a pandemic, which is a far-reaching, rather different than an epidemic. But you know, like so, you know, like it leveled the playing field in many ways, I think. And if people could understand that from a, you know, so it didn't matter how much money you've earned, this wasn't going to save you from possibility of impacting your life in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, exactly. When you see the presidents of countries or the prime ministers of countries getting COVID, or you see, you know, impoverished people getting, like you said, it didn't care what your background or your, you know, your ethnic background or your wealth was.
Even The Rock.
That's right. I mean, yeah, you see all these celebrities getting on that you think have this whole celebrity life, and it hits their family, or they're, you know, still challenged in different ways. So again, it reminds us of that humanity. And for us in the United States, which you didn't necessarily have in Australia during the same time, is we had this crazy election season going on with the presidential elections. You know, and we also had this heightened, it's not that racism doesn't exist throughout the world, because it does. But this year we've had a heightened awareness of racism in the United States with Black Lives Matters and police and stuff of, you know, things that have happened that have been all over the news. So it's heightened. To me, what it's also done is it's heightened where the injustices are in our systems or the processes or functions. You and I have talked a lot of times about when we go in and help businesses, we look at their marketing and their advertising, their process, their operations, their HR, their legal issues, their whole structure of their business, and their purpose, their passion, their culture, all of those things. Well, in this world, you have to have governments that function. You have to have health systems that function. You have to have, you know, international governments that cooperate and work together. And hopefully in humanity, there is a sense that we are evolving in not holding down other people because of their color or their sex or their, you know, discriminating factor, whatever it might be. So this pandemic really, to me, heightened the inadequacies where they exist in our structures and our systems and our processes, from healthcare to government, and yes, to racism, and to our political systems as well in the United States. And it was, you know, when you were again showing that cup, depending on what your view is on something, you and I could have had a debate about that cup and been both right about what it looked like had we not been able to see the other side. So I think about, you know, people that have gone to their tooth and nail of fighting for their cause on, say, a political, let's say on the president stuff, you know, somebody for the president, somebody for not. Both of those people absolutely believe he should be in, he should be out, as an example. And both felt that their cup view was this absolutely 100% accurate, and the other person's view was not accurate. And so there was this set of understanding. You and I both agreed we were looking at a cup, and we both agreed if we could see the whole picture, we might have a different experience. But what's happened is, this isolation and this pain thing, also the negative side of social media and connection, has caused people to be more attacking and painful and abusive in some fashions online because of their views, and not saying, yes, let me see the whole cup. Let me see your other view. So what's happened in part of this is the pain that people are experiencing, they're in their work, their environment, their income, their health, whatever it might be, in some cases has caused that to fuel out and to squeeze out and propel in other areas of life, i.e. racism, political issues, etc. So that's something that us as leaders that we are surrounded with, how do we as leaders dress up and show up in our own worlds to affect positive change in healthcare, political systems, racism, pandemics, whatever, because we can't change the world, but we can make a positive impact with what we do and how we show up in the world. So that's what I'm focused on as a function of this for me.
Yeah. And when people talk about changing the world, I would say to people, if you change your world, that impact of what you're doing will change the world. When you make positive improvements and productive improvements in your own world, that only helps, to do that in the bigger world, right? So, and we just got some perfect time to sound Dave. Well said by your guest regarding race and awareness. Kudos to you both. Good night from Atlantic, Canada. Yes, I can only imagine who that might be from Atlantic, Canada. But I want to the fascinating thing, especially I'm not to get political here because I'm sort of apolitical in a sense, but if you're a left wing or you're a right wing, they're both wings of the same bird. But when we're only thinking, you're either left or you're right. Well, it doesn't matter. You're still the left or right wing of the same bird. But if you deny the other wing and you only have one wing flapping, what happens to the bird?
Yes, that's right.
Right?
It's going to crash or keep going in circles, or crash or circle. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that to me, that's how I describe, politicals and the situation is we need to understand the bird and the importance of the left wing and the importance of the right wing to make sure that bird continues to fly.
Yeah. And right? Alan just said here that you need to surround yourself with people who have alternative views because it makes you stronger. And I believe with him on that. I believe that 100%. I am so intrigued by how others see the world when I don't see it that way. As an example, in the US, we have CNN and Fox News, and one is right and one is left. I love when things are hot topics to flip 15 minutes back and forth on each channel and view how they're being covered in the media, at least, or how feeds are coming in, or et cetera. Because I'm like, wow, I didn't think of it that way, or I didn't see that approach to it that way, or God, I never, it's just so fascinating to see the conviction, and it helps me then form my own stronger view about what I believe and I don't believe once I have more full factual information about a topic, whether it's politics or my business or my spirituality or my local government or my community or my family, and I think that is that is part of what this also is showing us is how do we become more empathetic to the world as a whole and to individuals in our own families? Because what I have found is in this pandemic and with the political systems is that the infighting and the pressure within your own immediate family has become even more intense. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I've spoken to that the political system, the pandemic, and everybody working from home with kids and school and the whole bit has put massive pressure on marriages and families and the isolation. As much as we say, yes, we want to be closer to our families and we want to have all that stuff, sometimes watch out what you ask for because you might get it.
How do close? Not that close. That's too close.
Not that close. So it's like, okay, how do we start there? How do we start with our brother, our mother, our sister, our husband, our sister-in-law? And I have that going on in my own life right now. It was interesting. I just got done writing my second book called The Iggy Principles. And that's about inviting good in versus edging good out, or inviting God in versus edging God out. And in that process, when I was writing the chapter on forgiveness, At the time I was writing the chapter 3 or 4 months ago, I could honestly say in the week and month I was focused on that chapter and doing the video for that chapter, I felt pretty clean in my life. Meaning I didn't feel like there was anybody massively instrumental that I needed to ask for forgiveness from, or that I needed to forgive. I really felt like I had done a pretty good job at that point of cleansing forgiveness forward and backwards. And after the book came out, it was interesting. There's at least 2 episodes that have transformed in my family, with immediate family, due to either politics or holidays or whatever it might be, that have caused a friction now that in some cases do require me forgiving someone and me asking forgiveness from somebody else. And it's amazing what that energy does to realize, okay, let me start here. Let me not let that linger on past this point, you know, and we as human beings want to be right. We want to be convicted in what we believe, or if we've been wronged, or, they should apologize first, all that stuff that we go through. So I'm trying to practice what I preach in this, showing up in the humanity of, let me start with my family and carry that on to my clients and to LinkedIn live streaming calls and to the world, so that I can do both of those things and be an example wherever I can start.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan just mentioned here, the biggest cohort of homelessness are females over 55 fleeing domestic violence because of the proximity of their abusive partners. And so one of the things that actually came up in this is where more people working from home, we saw an increase in domestic violence happening.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Yeah, because, all of a sudden they would be at work. So now those partners are at home, and the abusive partner is now in the home space longer.
Yes.
And it certainly caused a lot of challenges, whilst there's all the wonderful bits of working from home. Yes, Alan, and I know Alan does amazing work in the homelessness space here in Australia. But, even at a simplistic level, and not to diminish anything that we just talked about there, but even here, I already work from home. Before this happened, I was already working from home, but it still had an impact on us here, because my wife is like, okay, Dave, you're working from home, but you're always home now. Before you're working from home, but you would still go out to meetings and doing all that.
Right.
Because my office, I had to move my home office within the home, purely because it was at the back by the pool, and because, for having if she's having the golf ladies over for a few drinks after golf, and all they're sitting around the pool, it was right by my office. I'm telling, and I was doing these. I said, you have to be quiet now. I need, so we had to then move my studio here is in our lounge room. I have my office. I had to move my office. So working from home isn't, always. And I was already working from home.
Right.
But it still caused challenges in that, and be careful what you ask for, because I always wanted a lifestyle where I could work from home. I love my 2-minute commute, 3 minutes if I stop to the coffee first, and then walk my way into my office.
Right. Exactly.
And I appreciate that, but I also understand what Alan's sharing is that there's a whole lot of people who this has caused trauma and traumatic.
Talk about the true essence of pain. I mean, our topic about pain and what he just brought up. I mean, that's physical pain, emotional pain, financial pain, family pain. I mean, that is a pain at the core root level. And I think that this, luckily you have to maybe adjust in your house, and you have to modify a few things
compared to what these people have to do with.
Exactly. And that is a real thing that's happening for sure, whether it's depression, alcohol use. I have a friend of mine a friend of my wife's, who's a friend of a friend, but she sees him and her more often than I do. But anyway, her husband is a liquor distributor, and he distributes liquor for restaurants, hotels, and for grocery stores, etc. And he said his business, and he's been doing this for 12 years, has never, ever, ever been at the heightened level that it's been in the last 6 months of alcohol consumption, use, and selling of alcohol. And for him, he's like, hey, my sales are up. It's great. But what does that mean then? That means that people now are, consuming way more alcohol, thus possibly elevating more abuse or depression or things in households, et cetera. So it does become this circle of isolation in depression. Or if you don't have the tools or skills to say, God, my business did crash. Yeah, maybe I should reinvent. Maybe I should have done this sooner, but I didn't. Now what the hell do I do? Because I can't even make my mortgage payment next month. Now what the hell? That's a place where pain goes, okay, how do I take this and evolve from there? And I think in the upcoming sessions you and I will be having, we're going to be getting much more structured on the steps and processes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I look at your board behind you, your toolbox, and your steps, and my processes of the things that I share with my clients about, okay, what do you actually do with a business plan, a life plan, a checklist, a getting support, getting help, taking steps that can maneuver, shift for change, or, you know, if you're thinking about evolving to change, where do you start? If you have a brick upside the head and you're trying to make, you know, something happen by next week, what do you do then? You know, so how do these things happen, and how can you adjust in your businesses or create new businesses? And I think the 2 or 3 calls we'll have coming up, we can dig deeper into the processes that will help us dig deeper on these topics and subjects.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one last thing on pain here just happened right here in Perth, West Australia on Christmas Day. A gentleman drove his ute, his truck, as you call it in the States, his ute into the head office of one of the major banks here in the city, and just smashed it right through. There was nobody in the bank, anything like that. Just drove it straight in, and then walked out. And then nobody was hurt, anything like that, thankfully. But it just came out of the news that the witnesses said it was a deliberate act. He rode up on the curb, drove in, and purposely went straight through the glass doors and into the branch and left his ute there and walked out. Because it was because he felt that the bank had ruined his credit history. And obviously he obviously struggled maybe through COVID or something like that. Well, I don't know all the final details of it, but now he's being slapped with a $120,000 fine. But his inability to process that pain, now he's maybe viewed as a bit of a rebel and an outlaw, and people are celebrating him and taking that action against the big banks or anything like that, so they don't condone the behavior. But he's now even going to be worse off because he didn't have the tools to be able to process that pain.
Right, exactly.
He went through, and the emotional and, you know, financial pain, but obviously the emotional pain as well that he suffered. So I mean, that just happened here on Christmas Day. So, you know, like there's these sorts of things that are going on. So our ability, and this is a wonderful segue, because as we're getting into the last 4 minutes or so here of this live, one of the last things I had written down here that you and I had briefly talked about prior to this thing was, and you've already mentioned one of the key words, which is pressure. So what I like throughout this year, 2020, it's pressure tested the culture in every organization. I reckon it's put your culture under a pressure test. Did you have to spy on your team? Did you have to, you know, like that? Could you not trust them when they were working from home? Did they not trust you? Did they, you know, and like if you truly have the essence of a strong organizational culture, which is how we think and feel about our business, you know, this put a pressure test on it. And, you know, put a pressure test on the family culture. It's put a pressure test on, and so it should have shown you at least where you're really strong, which Alan mentioned earlier, that things like this make you stronger. But it also should have shown you areas where there was holes or cracks in that, either your family culture, your organizational culture, your community culture. And what's going to know Al, he's done a lot of great work to bring communities together. You know, but so it's, to me, it's put a lot of pressure on to test. And if you look at it as a pressure test, you know, from that in terms of pain, and how do we, a victor would go, okay, this was a test of my strength, my resolve, my company's strength, its resolve, my people, the team, our team, everyone we work with, our family unit. You know, our family unit was tested through this, because even here in West Australia, while we're probably one of the most well-off places in the world, you know, because we're finally the most isolated city in the world, finally paid off living in it. Right. But like when we had all the hard borders shut, even within the state, it happened right when my daughter's 21st birthday was. And so this pressure, you know, pressure test for a big important birthday. She lived in a regional city 400 kilometers away from us. We couldn't go and spend her 21st birthday with her. And then I know there's lots of people who had stories like that, but it put a pressure test on the culture of our family and our community in terms of our friends. And so we did a surprise Zoom. We said, let's have a Zoom call. And we didn't realize we had a whole bunch of people into the Zoom room before she came in. And we did a little surprise party for her. And I was so what was more surprising was how many people were willing to jump in to do that for her. So it really showed me, the pressure tested my friend network, my family network, you know, all the pseudo aunts and uncles that my daughter and my sons and that have. And it was a really good pressure test on our family unit and the community, our friendship, the friends that we have close to us.
Yeah,
you know,
I love that. And that pressure thing, just like the pain thing. I mean, there's this point about pressure, that pressure causes change, and pressure causes things to move forward and to happen. So, and it can be positive or negative in that pressure, or that
pressure can cause shit to blow up.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely true. Well, and sometimes things need to be blown up. Sometimes we want to blow them up, and sometimes we just get a grenade thrown on us that we were not expecting. And then shit, what do we do from there? And I think that's what our series is going to be about is, how do we take these bombs that are self-created or universally world-created, and how do we make those explode into something much more powerful than just pain that's left in the aftermath of it. So, I'm excited to chat about that.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to giving people there's tools like on how you can control what are the things you can control in life, and then there's things you can't control in life, but you can always control how you interpret and deal with those things. Right? So we're going to share with people the tools and from our own vast experience and our own life experiences, plus the work we would do with our clients in terms of how to move forward with power, passion, and purpose. So today was all about pain and understanding and building a relationship with pain, good, bad, or indifferent, and understanding pain for what it is, and then saying, okay, so in January we're going to launch a session. We'll talk about how to move into power, then one about passion, then one into purpose, so that we can take all that learning and all that information, and then some tools and processes to help everyone, including ourselves, the work that we do for our own selves. Because if you and I can't move forward, we can't help anyone else move forward either. And then be able to share that with everybody. So I really like to thank everybody who's tuned in today, and all the comments from everybody who chimed in and joined in the conversation. And anybody who has any comments, if they watch this after, please put them in there, and Steve and I will respond directly to all those. And if there's something that you'd like us to talk about in terms of the next session, which we'll send the date out shortly, please tell us, and we'll find a way to factor that in. And maybe we might even have some people jump in, and we might be able to even add them into the live stream, just get them to ask some live questions. With technology, we can do anything, Steve, right?
That's right. Anything is possible. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mate, yeah, and thank you so much for jumping in here on your late in the afternoon where you are, and it's between Christmas and
and if you're starting your day there. I know it's always funny. You're starting your day, and I'm getting ready to start it rapid mine. And
this was coffee. It wasn't anything else. Okay, it was coffee.
Okay. So. Good stuff. All right, Mr. Dave. Thanks everybody for joining us. Look forward to the next one.
And everyone have a safe and happy new year, and blessed, and start thinking about what 2021 you're going to choose to make 2021 for you. No matter what 21 throws at you, what are you going to do with it? All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.